to the Dailies on Network Television International, where we'll be keeping you updated with what is happening. It seems the tribunal is actually shaking the political map of Nigeria. So we'll encourage you to sit tight as we go through some of the stories that are trending on the papers. And I will be doing this together with Rachel Tansey. Good morning, Rachel. How you doing?
I'm fine. How about you?
I'm great. Thank you so much. And I am Sana Elisha Dasham. We'll open the phone lines later on the show where we'll allow you to air your view. But for now, you can drop your comments on our Facebook and YouTube, and then we'll try our best to read some of your comments as they relate to the stories we will be looking at on the paper this morning. And we'll go straight into the paper, starting with the Leadership newspaper.
On leadership, wiki blogs leakages, flags of 15 billion road projects in FCT to rehabilitate 135 roads rules out contract variations. You can find more details on page 7. We have IATA list Abuja Lagos airports among most expensive in Africa. You can start with the details on the front page and continue on page 7. We have a trend, Unilag students, NANS protest fee hike, and on numbers, customs impounds 813 million naira worth vehicles and tires. You can find more details on page 2. Rep slam NLC over alleged 100 million naira palliative for National Assembly members. You can find more details on page 7. The big story on the paper, governorship polls, APC, PDP, Labour, NNPP, as Judgment Day inches closer. Tribunal verdicts may alter Nigeria's political map. Kaduna, Enugu, Lagos, Kano, Delta, Nasarawa, Zamfara are states to watch. Bago unveils Niger State's green economy blueprint. CBN dispels rumors of Naira redenomination. You can find more details on page 24. I have cordial relationship with Uzodimma, a statement coming from Abbas. You can find more details of this statement on page 7, and that's all the news on Leadership newspaper.
All right, let's take a look at the Daily Sun newspaper. The big story we have, NAS Unilag student resume protest over fee hike. With the rider, higher education needs total overhaul, says the minister. You can find detail on page 28. Also, we are having a column here. Uzodimma delivers keynote at the Sun book presentation. You can find more on page 6 of the Daily Sun newspaper. The big story for the paper, we have Reps NLC clash over 100 million palliative. It is ridiculous, barefaced and lies. This is coming from lawmakers. They are favored more than other Nigerians. This is coming from a union. You can do well to find detail on page 6. Still on Daily Sun, we have the G7 ECOWAS meet over advancement of cyber security. Nigerian government killing airlines with multiple taxation charges. This is coming from the IATA. With the rider, we will provide forex tax holidays for domestic operators. This is coming from the minister. You can find that story on page 25. I have no grudge against the House of Assembly over rejection of cabinet nominees. This is coming from Sanwo-Olu. We remember there was a back and forth about twice. He submitted his cabinet members, but then they rejected some. So here the governor is saying he has no grudges over the House of Assembly over the rejection. You can find more detail of what he said on page 7. Libyan flood disaster death toll hit 6,000. It keeps increasing from 1,000, 3,000, now it's 6,000. And we have the writer here saying 10,000 missing, 20,000 displaced, and 3,000 houses destroyed. And this is where I think I am encouraging that we really look at our climate and see what we can do about that. You can find more detail of that on page 20. Federal government moved the NIMC to Interior Ministry. You can find more of that on page 6. Still on Daily Sun, proceeds of kidnapping used to finance terrorism. This is coming from the ONSA. You'll find more detail on page 4. 42 bidders win the gas flare commercialization licensing. You can find that on page 2. We have a picture story on the front page of the paper. You can do well to grab the paper and read more detail of any story that is of interest to you.
On Nigerian Tribune, NIN and passport crisis, federal government moves NIMC to Interior Ministry.
Reps denies collecting 100 million naira palliatives. You can find more details on page 15. What my years as ambassador taught me, a statement coming from Awolowo Dosumo, and CVL colloquium honors her and two others. You can find more details on page 5. The big story on the paper, proceeds of kidnapping used to finance terrorism. You can find more details on page 11, and this is a report coming from ONSA. Nigeria ranks highest in airport charges in Africa. Abuja Lagos airports top list. 13 states at risk of flood. NEMA warns 6,000 dead in Libya. Flood. More details can be found on page 11 and 12. And then we have a picture story showing the protest saying federal government must fund education adequately. Poor students, parents cannot be the source of funding education. And you can find more of what the students are protesting over inside the paper. And that's all the news on Nigerian Tribune.
Richard, I think let's talk a little about the issue of proceeds of kidnapping being used to finance terrorism. And I remember we have been talking about, in fact, just yesterday on the Dailies, we're looking at the fact that when we were having the redesign of the Naira note and then looking at how much is outside and how much is in the banks, because the reason why we had the redesign and all of that was to control some things, one of which is actually to have less note outside and have more in the bank. But you and I agree the fact that to some extent, the aim was being defeated. Reason why? Because we're still seeing a number of kidnapping here and there. Just yesterday we saw the Akwa Ibom NYC core member that we are seeing that the banks are still requesting more. Yes. After paying about 13 million or so, they are asking for additional money. And then we keep seeing left, right, and center. In fact, I clearly remember where we had the redesign, before this money could actually rotate around, we saw when bandits snap pictures having the new currency. And you and I were shocked. How did they get access to this money? If this money had not even gotten to Nigeria, that is to say somebody somewhere is financing this terrorism. And no wonder we're seeing here, they're saying that the proceeds of kidnapping is being used. We keep enriching the terrorists, we keep enriching bandits. No wonder I keep seeing them with some ammunition, and then we get wowed by how did they get access to all of this? Who are the people behind this? And that is why I remember I have been pushing forward the fact that, yes, we know that we're being told by I think the former administration, the fact that they said they are going to prosecute these people in secret, and then even the media is not allowed to go there. But I was like, these things are not done hidden, these things are done openly, so why can't we have them be put on TV, let everybody know who these people are? What do we have to hide as a nation? I believe that we want to protect the sanity of this country at its present. It is only right that the people that are behind all of this should be brought to book. The UAE gave us the list of these people. We heard that we have some former governors part of it. We have some former ministers and all of it. Who are these people? Let their names be displayed on the papers for everybody to know, so that whoever is trying to trade in that same part will know that this person has been used as a scapegoat. So you should be very careful. Niger over the years has been a place that was peaceful before, but right now it's a no-go era anymore. I will talk about the Northeast. Quite a number of states right now, you can't even try to even walk. If you're going to Maiduguri right now, your family members have to keep praying and hoping that you get there safely. Why? Because we're beginning to see that terrorism is becoming the order of the day. So I am hoping that with this report here, I'm hoping that our lawmakers will not sit on this, that when they're having a sitting, let us have something being done seriously. I know the back and forth is actually to the lawmakers actually named the Boko Haram a terrorist group. They were more like unknown gunmen. And like, they are not unknown. They are known. They have faces. People know them. They live in a community. But because they actually give a small token to these people in the community, so nobody wants to come out and say, these are the people. And even when we saw that they said 500 million will be given, or is it 5 million naira will be given to ever know these people? How safe am I that when I say I know this is where these people are? This is what Nigerians are concerned. So I'm hoping and truly trusting that when we see stories like this making it on the papers, we'll not just sit on it and then wave it away. If we're trying to look at how the president can achieve his 8 manifestos that he's actually putting, which of course we know security is part of it, then we have to take this issue of terrorism seriously. Let's not just look at it and say it's by the way. Believe you me, they are working with maybe people internally, even outside the country, to make sure that that Nigeria goes down by all means. So we hope that when we see reports like this coming on the paper, our leaders will wake up to their call, because your number one responsibility is to protect life and property. Once you feel like that, forgive me, but Nigerians just calculate you as being a very wrong leader. So we hope that our leaders will wake up to their call and do the right thing to protect their citizens by all costs.
I mean, Sele, this is not news, because any form of organized crime at whatever level is being funded, it's being financed. Even if it is armed robbery, it's being funded by somebody, because these weapons are being purchased. What about the food these people eat to wait and lie for their prey to come? What about the transportation to get there? So every form of organized crime, at any level, as long as it's organized, no matter how little it is, it's being funded. And that is the same for kidnapping, that is the same for banditry, that's the same for Fulani herdsmen, unknown gunmen. As long as it's an organized crime, not just something that just happened out of nowhere, as long as it's organized, that have to do with a group of certain people, whether their identity is known or not, has funding, and there are people financing it. And then it is no big news that what is being used for kidnapping is being used for terrorism. And I think this is vast versa. There is a point in time where what was gotten from terrorism was used for kidnapping, because over the years we've seen that this crime evolved. Insecurity kept on evolving in the country, because it was Fulani herdsmen and bandits, kidnappers, and then it kept evolving. And whether we like it or not, we know that we have mercenaries that have been put in place for this. Now, they might have the money, but sometimes they don't have the purchasing power. So sometimes when they go to raid these villages, sometimes we've had instances where all they went to look for was food. But of course, people won't just sit down and watch you come and clear out their grains and all of that. So you have to do it with violence, because in as much as they have money, they don't have purchasing power. These people know that they don't know them in this community. So them going out to go and purchase food like every other individual will mean trouble, will mean you giving out your location, because whether we like it or not, there are people putting their eyes out there to watch out who are these people and what can we do about it in their own silent way. So yes, these things are being used to fund terrorism, because whether we like it or not, we are looking at millions of naira being given to these kidnappers in the name of ransom. And what do they do with this money? Of course, is to buy more ammunition, is to be able to cover more territory in the harm that they plan to do. It is for them to even buy their way through certain things, because if you are traveling and you have arms and you have enough money, and we know that one of the challenges we have on our roads is that security men are being paid off. They are being given stipends on the road, they are being given bribes, and these are all the monies they use to find their way out and do certain things with. They buy security and all of that. So yes, is used to fund terrorism. There's no doubt about that. It's out there, and it is clear. But then what we're expecting from the government of Nigeria is that don't just know this information and do nothing about it, because it feels like nothing is being done about it, because they keep waxing strong, they keep gaining more grounds and all of that. What are you doing with this information? What are the resources? The more you're silent about it, it just keeps proving the fact that there's so much sabotage in the military system, there's so much sabotage in our security agencies and all of that. Because if you have this information, then why are you not cutting down the root? Why are you not going to the root of these things? Why are we still having people that are not even Nigerians? Why are we still having this hideout of these people? Because they are not in the sky, they are living on the lands in this country, and these are territories that are known. What is stopping people from going there, and why do they keep waxing strong? It means for all of these years that we've been facing this insecurity, and it has been gaining different kinds of faces, then it means somebody have not been doing their job. Someone have been compromising somewhere, and this is what we are looking forward to seeing a stop in Nigeria.
You know, Rachel, you and I know how porous our borders are, so it's very easy for us to have intruders coming into the country.
Yes.
Of course, there are times where we see arrests being done, and then you'll be sure that these people don't even know how to speak English. These people don't even know how to speak basic language, so it's obvious these people are not even from Nigeria, they're from other countries. So I think this is a synergy, not just to our armed forces or not just to the police, but let us say a synergy between all our force men, even going down to even the custom, immigration. Everybody have to put his or her hands together on deck. Let us do away with all of, just like you said, we have to do away with it from its root cause, because we cannot keep cutting branches and hoping that new leaves will eventually spring out of that tree. So definitely we have to do away with all of this thing. Let's stop romancing these people, making them feel that. I mean, no one that was against when
negotiate.
You get, Rachel.
What
truly.
Yes,
so nobody that was against when we had one of the former governors saying that we need to call them to round table and have negotiate. What are you negotiating with the bandits? We have nothing that they owe. So we hope that our leaders will actually do the right thing. Well, let's take a look at the Vanguard newspaper, where we'll be starting with a big story on the Vanguard newspaper, where we have forest scarcity send Naira tumbling to 930 Naira to $1. Well, I was saying, I don't know which will go first, whether the petrol price or Naira to $1. So we keep our fingers crossed on that. We have few riders on that say the BDC lament dollar scarcity. We have analysts disagree on involvement of the BDCs, and then we also have parallel market premium widens. Pressure may continue despite the reform. This is coming from Expert. You can read more of that on page 4. Still on the Vanguard, we have 100 days economy reform have made life more difficult, coming from a financial experts. We also have Nigeria account for 30% global malaria burden. We hope we'll do something, coming from the minister, how we can eradicate malaria, because it's still taking quite a number of lives in the country. So we hope something will be done about that. MTN raises concern over vandalism of site and infrastructure in the southeast. You can find that on page 11. IGP declared killer of the DPO Bako in Rivers wanted. So we hope that hands will be on deck to make sure the people involved in that will be brought to book. And on academic record, we graduated in Chicago Varsity in 1979. Tinubu's classmate speaks out. You know, Nigerians will wonder, why is he just speaking now with all of the talks back and forth that have been coming, but better late than never. You can find more on page 9. Ransom from kidnapping, threatening terrorism and banditry, coming from the National Counter-Terrorism Center. More can be found on page 4. $600 million trap fund. Tinubu directs CBN to meet foreign airlines. You can find more on page 5. Also, we have other stories here on insecurity. Niger to reopen 11 public schools closed in 2021. Niger to reopen 11 public schools closed in 2021. You can find more on page 10. ECOWAS moved to perfect design for project, talking about the Abidjan-Lagos highway. You can find more of that on page 9. We have a column for AFCON 2023. Where we see Nigeria set to face Senegal, Egypt, or Ivory Coast in same group. You can do well for our sport lovers to find more detail of that. And here we have a picture story here, still talking about insecurity. Police meet Khan in Kaduna. You know, a lot have been coming out from that state on the issue of insecurity. So you can do well to grab the Vanguard and read more detail of any of the story that is of interest to you.
On Daily Independent, Nigeria's higher education landscape needs total overhaul. Statement coming from the minister. Proceeds of kidnapping being used to finance terrorism. The big story, federal government asks CBN to meet airlines quarterly to resolve FX crisis. Whose investments into aviation sector with tax holidays. IATA laments Lagos Abuja airports most expensive in Africa. Still on Daily Independent, students kick as OAU jerks up fees by 300%. Sanwo-Olu swears in 37 cabinet members read Riot Act. Reps refute claim of 100 million naira palliative to members, says NLC lied. Court orders DSS police protection for Kogi ADC Guba candidate. You can find more details on page 29. Tinubu condones Libya as flood death toll surpasses 5,100 in one city. You can find more details on page 29. Still on Daily Independent, 42 firms emerge successful bidders for Nigerian flare site development. And at the downside of the paper, federal government to expedite action on passage of water resources management bill. You can find more details on page 2, and that's all the news on Daily Independent.
Rachel, I wanted talking about it earlier, talking about the issue of hike of school fees. And then we saw the placard coming from students protesting the hike of fees. And here we're seeing on the paper here, student kickers OAU check up fees by 300%. And you ask, what does the schools want the students to do? It is obvious that some students are actually not going to make it to this new session in school, Rachel, from the way things are looking. Possibly some students will have to put their education on hold to see what they can do to further. And we know that quite a number of parents that their wards are in the private or are in the private universities are people who have it. And very few parents can afford to take their wards to private universities. So right now, most parents depend on the federal university. Initially, tuition fee was supposed to be free. But as it is right now, I cannot really tell if tuition fee is free any longer. Because believe you me, the way things are moving in this country, I think the government really not need to come to the aid of parents at this moment. We saw the paper recently where parents were talking about the hike of school fees. And the school fees is not even talking about tertiary institutions. They're talking about primary and secondary school because schools will be resuming very soon. So of course, parents are wondering where they're going to get the fee to pay. But right now we're seeing that tertiary institutions are not left out. And no wonder they're saying that maybe that was the reason the government introduced the student loan that was supposed to come up. But they're even looking at some of the criteria that you have to meet up as a student. Quite a number of them cannot even make it. So what are we saying as a country? We know where in other countries where we are not comparing Nigeria with other countries, but from your primary school up to your secondary school is free. So then when you go to tertiary institution, that's why students do all they need to do to get scholarships, so they will be able to go to the university and study well. But then the way things are moving here, we say that even when there are scholarships, who you know eventually that you'll be able to get the scholarship. It's not being done free. And so even before we see some of this scholarship being put either on TV or whatever means of medium out there for Nigerians to get access to, you realize that other people or people in the high and mighty have already put their own words there. So it's very difficult for students to get it. So I really think the government needs to come to the aid of the schools and do something about it. This is just OAU complaining. So you cannot tell how about other universities and cut across the country. Quite a number of things are going on there. And I really feel the pain of parents because even when it was not, I knew how parents were actually struggling to make sure that their word study. And then, believe you me, Rachel, that even after paying the school fees, lecturers will not even leave you to rest. One handout after another, you cannot even breathe, and you have to pay for it. One ticket you have to sell after another. If you do not, you have a carryover. So what are we saying? So imagine after paying 200,000 naira just to show, if you forget about other departmental, SUG and left, right, and center, you have to pay. And then you have been given a carryover again. And then we know for other studies like other department like that, you have parapsych courses that means an extra year. So imagine the way things are moving. So we're truly hoping the government can come to the aid of the schools and see what can be done. Because we remember they debunked the rumor that it's still tuition fee, but then we're seeing that the reverse is the case we're seeing on the paper. So I hope the government can do something. Let us have a synergy with the Ministry of Education so that something can be done to make sure that the student can breathe and go to school.
Excellent. The question now is, can the government actually come in and help the student? Because these are still government-owned schools.
True.
And these are government schools hiking their tuition price. These are still the government we're talking about. So can they, that is the question, can they come in and help these students? Because the only way that they can come in to help these students is by not allowing this hike in the first place. However, they've allowed the hike, then it immediately sends a signal to you. It already makes it out there clearly, like pop and clear, that the government cannot do anything about it right now, because is the fault, the problem don't just lie at the tertiary. If you look at our budget, Sele, and you see how much is allocated to education, you already know where the priority of the Nigerian government lies. There's no magic about this whole funding thing. Like, I'm keeping my fingers crossed concerning what the minister said concerning the 25% funding going into. Now, are you now going to meet the president to ask him, you need to increase our budget, or are you trying to get aid outside to come into? That's the only way you can be able to. Or what are the measures you're going to put to make sure that, you know what, more funding goes into the tertiary institution? Because as it is now, most of the structures we see coming into the schools, you will see that it's being funded by one
Third fund,
yes, exactly. So you already see that even as it is now, the government is incapacitated on a lot of ways to even provide the basic facilities that is needed in the schools. Now talk more of tertiary, talk more of tuition. Now what I like, the statement that I saw on these placards that these protesters are holding, is it clearly says that the federal government must fund education adequately. And this is where we are going to charge the government. That is high time you prioritize education in this country. We cannot fund education for you. You understand? This parent barely earning 100,000 cannot fund education for you. You understand? This mother owing earning not more than a minimum wage cannot fund education for you. So if you sit down and you allow your your tuition to keep being high, it's just a recipe for disaster, because in the end it's not going to be adequate, because we will now start the ripple effect. Is not that students will go and toil to come and pay. It's more of having,
it's not even flexible.
It's not flexible, exactly. So what we're most likely going to have are dropouts. So this money you're hoping to get from this tuition hike, you might not get it, because we will now start having an increase in the out of school students number. This is what is going to be, because we are in an economy that is not friendly, just as you said, Sele, for students to work and school at the same time. So what are we going to do about it? It's for the federal government to show us that they are capable of boosting the education system, and the only way is by putting in more funding and resources, because these good administrations are seeing that what we are getting from the government is not enough for us to cater for a school that takes in thousands and thousands of students in the name of government school. And we have to find a way around this. So the government just has to prioritize education, Sele. From our budget, you will know that schools are not funded properly, that education don't get the right amount of money. That is why even our curriculum cannot be upgraded, because if we upgrade it, the government is not ready to pump in the amount of money that will be up to that standard of a modern curriculum. So the Nigerian government just have to show us that they have education in mind, and then it starts by how much you allocate to the education ministry and how much schools, tertiary universities get. If not, we will keep seeing this. And the question is, can you? Of course you can, but you just need to prioritize education. And we are waiting to see an administration that is truly willing to go all the way to fund education in this country.
We'll just keep our fingers crossed, because I remember during the 8-month strike of ASU, we saw where the government was telling parents, come in and please play with this teacher's school bag. Right now, the students and parents are also begging the government to please come in here. Maybe we need to start having PTA meetings, even in a tertiary institution. Maybe that will give room to let us see where there is a synergy, and then a communication between the parents and the government. What really is the problem and how can things work better? Just like we're seeing this placard here saying parents cannot fund all of these things. Some of the buildings, you can't even. Let's just drop it at there, Richard. So I just hope that the government will really come into this. Well, I think we're ripe for a break at this moment, so we'd love to, take a break, take our breath, let you through the stories. And when we come back, we continue with the paper analysis. Please stay tuned with us.
Democracy is the theory that common people know what they want and deserve to get it good and hard. Join me every Friday, 7 p.m. on National Talk for analysis as well as in-depth perspective on issues as they unfold in and around Nigeria, as well as an opportunity to add your voice.
Thank you for staying tuned. It's still the Dailies on Echo Television International. We'll be looking at quite a number of stories where we've seen that students are begging for the hike of fee to go down, and then quite a number of stories. The political map of Nigeria seems to be shaking, as you know, the day is actually approaching nearer for the tribunal. So quite a number of stories on the paper. We'd love to hear what your own feedbacks are. What are your own contributions, your thoughts on some of the story that is on the paper this morning, please. Do remember that when you call us, turn down the volume of your TV set, and then please try to make your contribution relevant to what we are talking about in a minute, so that other callers can also call in and air their view on any of the story that is of interest to them as well. I still have Rachel Tanzer with me in the studio. Thank you so much.
You're welcome,
Rachel.
Charlie.
All right, let's take a look at what the Guardian newspaper have for us this morning. Starting with the big story. High prices push government homes beyond average Nigerians reach. And we're having a picture here where we can see federal government commenced 6,068 homes in 46 sites in the 35 states. And then we have, but only 2,870 units were completed, where others are at various stages of completion. Then we're seeing building come with price variation, of course. With the cost of things going high, you will really tell. And then we're seeing that the minimum wage is still at 30,000 naira. So the number of poor people in Nigeria is about 95.1 million naira. That is according to the World Bank in 2022. Then we're seeing that only 10% of Nigerians can desire to own homes and could afford it. So you could see that there's quite a number of things, and then while that of like a 3-bedroom flat, for instance, ranges between 30 million to about 60 million naira. That's depending on where you're actually getting these homes. And I know recently, Rachel, if you go to the market just for a market survey on how much the cost of all these building materials, and you'll be wow. A bag of cement right now is about 20,000 naira, Rachel. How much is a block? Whether you're going by 6 by 6, 6 by 9 inches, depending on those who are familiar with all these terms of building material, you will tell that it is very, very difficult for an average Nigerian to own their own home.
Yes.
So even if you want to buy blocks, maybe you have to go for those that are made with clay. And it depends. How much are you going to pay the laborers to actually come and do this? And then we know that with this flood, quite a number of homes have gone down. So they're talking about building again. So it's going to cost you how much to build all of these things. So a lot of things are happening. Inflation alone. Remember the paper where we saw what inflation is and how homeowners are increasing the prices.
Yes,
of
they
rents.
are.
So you know that Nigerians are going through a lot of things right now. So I do not know whether is it education, is it housing, quite a number of things need to be. But we are patient with the government, just like the president said. We believe that some of the long-term goals he has will be able to touch some of these things, and then we'll see that maybe eventually it is our desire, even though it has been very difficult once the price of something goes up to go down. But we are hoping that a time will come where all of these things will go down, and then Nigerians can be able to own their own homes, especially with the number of people who have retired and all of that. You don't expect somebody to use his pension to build a home.
Of course not.
So we are hoping the government will come in somehow and actually, reduce the pain on Nigeria so that something positive can come out eventually.
Exactly, Sele. When it comes to housing planning, it's only the government that is at the position to be able to reduce the cost of attaining houses for its people. And I'm not even looking at the federal government level, I'm talking about the state government. But then we're having states that are struggling with paying salaries, struggling with minimum wage, struggling with no revenue at all, struggling with palliatives and nothing yet to come to show for it. So you find out that it becomes impossible for the state government to be able to step in, because there's supposed to be housing development. It's supposed to be a continual thing, because everything coming from the government is subsidized. Now, even if it won't be subsidized, it's giving you a more flexible plan, especially if you are a government worker. It gives you a plan that can go for as long as your service years. Is not, they don't give you a limit, maybe 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, depending on your plan. And of course, nobody is planning to die. They won't give you a plan, say, what if you die 5? No, it is for that long period of time, and then it gives the room for that. But in a situation where the government feels, then we have private realtors coming in and then giving people plan. And then one thing for sure is that housing is not luxury. It is a necessity. And then people have no option than to go for these private housing companies that are giving this house plan, and still at outrageous prices. And then people have no option but to find themselves living in outrageously expensive houses that shouldn't be like that if only the government have stepped in adequately. So I'm just hoping that governors, administration, and government at every level, imagine, Sele, if in a situation where local government having autonomy, we can even be able to see housing plans even at the local government level. It might not be much, it might not be big, but there could be like gradual, deliberate plans towards that, and we would even be able to see housing plan even at the local government level. So I'm just hoping for that state government will wake up and say, you know what, it is our responsibility to make housing plans available for our workers. We know what our pay rate is according to your income level. You give plans accordingly, and you give people a time frame that they will be able to pay, and before a short period of time we will see that more people are able to have a roof over their head, and they will be living rent free and only have to worry about other bills and utilities and all of that. So there's so much work to be done. We'll keep spelling it out, and we just hope that we wake up to having a government that is willing to do all the work.
You know, the challenge, Richard, is the fact that even government don't really have homes. That is it. They don't have all these homes. So most of the estates and the bungalows we're seeing are mostly owned by private individuals. So definitely the price will be this high. Imagine just renting a one-bedroom flat, and then you're paying like over 7 million naira. So just imagine. So we hope that, just like you said, there should be a better way the government will come, because over the years I've seen government have been selling up their properties to private individuals. That just send one thing, which is the fact that the government can no longer be able to maintain all of these facilities. So we will look forward to seeing better plans eventually. Well, let's continue looking at the story on the Guardian newspaper, where we have less than 1% of unemployed youth benefit from government intervention, which this is really something the government needs to look into increasing. We're having the youth taking majority of the population in Nigeria. Then you know that this call for a big concern, where we have just less than 1% of unemployed youth benefiting from government intervention. You can find more of that business story on page 15. Also, we have 6 years after Nigeria award 49 gas flare sites to 42 investors. We're here to hear something positive. Do well to read more of that news on page 3. The $800 million stock funds, federal government directs CBN to settle foreign airlines backlog. You can find that on page 6. And the SCIID party, how not to investigate deter criminals. You want to know what that means? Read the story on page 4. And now we have Kanu suspend another Casco director for allegedly palliative diversion. You can find more of that story on page 30. And that's all on the Guardian newspaper.
On the Nation newspaper, the big story: employers reject NLC's plan to shut down economy. Why it is avoidable by Issa Remuti. You see, awaits government action on proposal. And then we have statement coming from NECA saying if the strike should happen, it will be counterproductive for both employers and workers. And then statement coming from NLC saying the government has not done anything to suggest that it was committed to its promises. Our plans remain on course. You can start with the details on the front page and continue on page 2. CNG buses on test run in Ogun. Gains of autonomy for varsities by VC. You can find more details. We are saying that vice chancellors are moving that led varsities also have autonomy. You can find more details to why he is thinking it will be a gain on page 21. NEMA's alert flood to pound 50 communities in 13 states. NMC moved to Interior Ministry to speed up passport issuance. Then we have Tinubu Abiodun orders felicitate Alake at 80. You can find more details on page 8. Still on the Nation newspaper, we have cooperate with lawmakers. Sanwo-Olu tells 37 commissioners and advisors. U.S. China owe half of world's $235 trillion debt. Food, energy prices push inflation to highest level in 18 years. You can start with the details on the front page. And at the downside of the paper, battle rages over rector in Osun Poly. OAU OK's new fees. More details can be found on page 20. And that's all the news on the Nation newspaper.
Richard, this story, NEMA and last flood to pound 50 communities in 30 states. What is the way forward? Because I'm already concerned. We've seen what happened in Libya. And believe you me, if we are not careful, it is not a prayer, it is not a desire, but it is what it looks like it is. And we do not want to hear situations or times where people already, we know of number of communities that have already been affected by the flood, especially when the Cameroon opened its dam and then the havoc it caused in Nigeria. And let's not even talk about Cameroon. Even internally, some of our activities have actually resulted in erosion, flooding, and all of that. Now, what is the way forward? Because we keep seeing NEMA year in, year out, giving alerts, giving warning, but nothing seems to be changing, you know, Rachel. It seems as if the more the warning comes, the worse situations get, because eventually it seems this warning doesn't get to the people or to the places it's supposed to get. So eventually we still hear lives are being lost, buildings have been collapsing, this and this are happening. So right now I am concerned, what can the government do better rather than just coming to the paper, alerting on the TV set, alerting? What can we now do? What are some of the measures? What are some of the advice the government can come out and say, do this, do that? How come? Because believe you me, there are some things that we cannot even help, especially talking about the climate. It's changing. The water level keeps going high, so we cannot even help that on its own. So, but then what are some of those things, you know, as a state, as a country, we can do to avert some of this flooding? Because I remember in the paper beginning of the week, we saw they said there will be 3 days where we'll have rain and then wind and all of that. So Nigerians should be alert in case of all of these things. We are saying just leave the areas and going to this place. What more can we do as a country?
Fela, when you see world leaders being worried about climate change and Nigerian leaders being worried about winning investors, then you just wonder. It keeps showing that our priorities are always lost at a point where we need to put certain things ahead of another. When you see that these countries are taking climate change seriously, is they know that regardless of how much money you have, climate can clean it completely, can take away everything. Because when there is a disaster, you find yourself building a city from the roots again to the top. You're not talking about the displaced people. You're not talking about the economy of that place that is being lost. You're not talking, it is a lot of things. So when you see what leaders that are doing well economically worried about climate change, you are supposed to be worried about it, because they know what it means to the economy and what it means to the life, that it is their responsibility. So I'm looking forward to a Nigerian government that will prioritize climate change. You should be able to find your way in to these countries that are championing this cause for climate change and know what is happening, because there was COP 27 last year, there is COP 28 this year, and I'm looking forward to Nigeria also asking to be a part of it and going there, be in the front and trying to learn, because that is the only way you can stay ahead of it. And as it is now, Sele, it is not getting to the people that it's supposed to get to, because the government is not funding it to get to the people that needs to get. It's not just about telling them. You also need to help them with evacuation. You need to help them finding where they will live to. You need to tell them where they need to go, that they will be safe. Because these are people that are in remote areas. These are people that are in waterways that they don't even know about it. So how will a common man, how will a layman, how will an illiterate know that I am in a waterway? You need to go to those communities. You need to go to those places. Not only are you telling them to leave, but you need to tell them where to live to, because these are all flood prone areas. So you are the one to tell them, okay, this place is safe, move here. It is so much work, Sele, and we just need to have a government that is willing to do the work. You have to be in. This is not just an announcement you have to make. You have to also be in the process of them moving out of those areas for them to be safe, and creating, be it a temporary shelter for them, while you're working out other permanent measures to make sure that these areas, after the rainy season have gone, before next year, their proneness to flooding will be less compared to what it was in the previous year, because the water levels are going high, and even areas that are not even supposed to be flooded in the first place are seeing flooded. Yes, are getting, yeah, exactly. So let them do the work. That's all we need from the government.
Well, I hope that the right authorities are listening to us, and from the way it's looking, next year Cameroon will be opening its dam again. So I hope we're already putting measures on ground on what to do to prevent, if that happens, what are we going to do internally as a state? Well, let's take a look at the Voice of Liberty newspaper, where we are having CBN forensic audit, presidential investigation panel on conspirators in alleged 7 trillion naira fraud linked to top officials. You can find more detail of that story inside the paper. CBN denies policy to crash exchange rate to 1.25 naira to a dollar. You can find more of that story inside the paper. Proceeds of kidnapping being used to finance terrorism still coming from the ONSA. We've seen it on most of our papers. Prepare for heavy rainfall and flooding. Nema 1, Kanu, Adamawa, and 11 others. So I will encourage us to read the story so that we know if our state is actually part of it, or even if you are not, if you are sharing the border with any of the states, it's something to look forward to. Security challenges. Army established special forces to tackle terrorism and others. Also, we see Chicago State University denies knowledge of Tinubu certificate. He was my classmate at university, old schoolmate is speaking. And then on insecurity, Abuja woman, daughters abducted. Sorry, I take that story again. On insecurity, Abuja woman, daughters abducted, husband paid 2.8 million naira ransom. You can find more in the paper. Northern Group raises alarm over alleged plot to unseat the national speaker Abbas. You can read the story more inside the paper, and that is all on the Voice of Liberty.
On New Telegraph, CBN writ riot act to IMTOs over bridges. This is on foreign exchange. False report on crashing exchange rate. Global debt rose to $235 trillion in 2022. This is a report coming from the IMF. You can find more details on page 25. And on Niger Delta, Minister meets Jonathan Dokubo over crude theft and others. Naira falls to 930 naira per dollar at parallel market. BDCs lament dollar scarcity. 90% of senators distracted by court cases. A statement coming from Kingi Bay. You can find more details for our statement on page 2 and 11. APC begins e-registration of members. The big story on New Telegraph, federal government to grant tax holiday to new airlines and others. The writer says directs CBN to defray carriers trapped funds. Nigerian Airlines aircraft demand to rise by 2042. Abuja Lagos Airport walls costless. This is a statement coming from IATA. Face multiple charges and high interest rates. Then we have many state-owned airports put regulatory and financial burden on agencies. A statement coming from the Director General of the NCAA. You can find more details on page 3, 4, and 26. UNILAG OAU student protest tuition hike. We have Africa CFTA unwittingly creating biggest market for Asians and others. Man is warning. We have Okori saying why Atiku Obi's petition against tribunal failed at PEPT. You can find more details on page 9. NLC's claim of 100 million naira palliatives for lawmakers a lie. This is coming from the reps defending their honor, saying it's not true, saying demand immediate retraction, and says transparency, truth necessary for functioning democracy. NYSC member kidnapped in Delta. You can find more details on page 3, 4, and 26. Another downside of the paper, we have mild head injury increases stroke risk. So if you've had a head injury in the past, no matter how little it is important for you to go and see a doctor because you are at risk of having a stroke. You can find more details on page 26, and that's all the news on New Telegraph newspaper.
Well, I hope that our government will do something to protect our core members more as they're serving. I remember you and I had a conversation one time where you said that maybe it's not necessary anymore for us to see core members going to
very far
places.
Yes.
Maybe they could serve within. The internet has made it. You can actually have an interaction. I mean, you can have a flair of what it means to be in the northern Nigeria if you are from the southern part of the country. So I hope we'll do more, because it's really sad when parents are hoping and trusting that, because when you're a core member, they say that you belong to the government. You're supposed to be protected. But we've seen that the number of kidnapping of our core member keep going high every day. So this is still linked to the terrorism we're talking about earlier. We hope that the government will actually do something on its own part to protect core members. If it means that you have security agency accompany these core members to orientation camp, and then making sure that even where they are being posted for their PPA, it's a very good place that they are being protected. I think it will go a long way to make parents to be at ease when their wards are actually serving. So our fingers are crossed, and we hope that the government will do something better when it comes to protecting them.
So.
Well, Rachel, thank you for doing this.
You're welcome, Sally.
And thank you to our viewers. Thank you to the supporters. Thank you to our producer, the crew members, and every other person that made this program a success. Until we come here again tomorrow, please do have a blessed day ahead.